Hi everybody, welcome to today's CG webinar. We've got a few people in the room here in Oxford and quite a few online. So my name is Rachel Brooks and I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's webinar. Can I just check that people online can hear me? Maria, could you just nod if you can hear me? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so I'm delighted to welcome Maria Gretzky, who's our speaker today. Maria is a sociologist and an anthropologist whose work focuses on the intersection of algorithmic culture, emotional culture, and knowledge production. And her doctoral dissertation examined the digitalization of academic education and knowledge. Maria is currently a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Sociology, Political Science and Communication at the Open University of Israel. Her ongoing research investigates how algorithmic tools in the field of social investing translate social, personal and emotional values into financial metrics. And as you can see from the slides, hopefully today Maria is going to be talking about supervised autonomy, the emotional architecture of digital academic education. So thank you very much for joining us, Maria. Maria is going to speak for about 30 minutes. Please do feel free to put questions for her in the chat as we go along. But over to you when you're ready, Maria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you so much for having me today. And special thanks to Rachel Brooks for inviting me for this fascinating forum. I'm very happy and excited to be here and to share for the first time, I think, some parts of my PhD from my doctoral research. And please feel free to ask me any questions and stop me if anything is unclear. I really appreciate discussions and would be very happy to receive any comments or thoughts you might have. And before I begin, as a citizen of Israel, I feel it is important to express that I regard the situation in Gaza as disaster in every possible aspect, and that I strongly and actively oppose our government's policies and Israel's military actions. The paper I will present today does not address the situation in Palestine, Israel, but please feel free to approach me afterwards if you have or if you would like to discuss it. So I want to start today's discussion with this advertisement from one of the academic institutions in Israel. As you can see, the ad shows a student sitting next to a giant mobile phone, displaying various system updates, like a course for stress management, improving soft skills, and courses on other social emotional skills. Next to the image appears the text, you know when your phone gets stuck because it needs a version update? You deserve to update too. Come study with us and be the best version of yourself. So essentially, this advertisement is selling higher education through a promise of two highly sought after resources among students today: personal emotional development and the digital learning experience. But what struck me about this ad is that these two dimensions don't appear separately. They're intertwined. The student's body is literally embodied through the giant mobile phone, and their learning process is embodied through downloading updated software. And this is exactly the heart of what I want to talk with you about today: the integration of emotions and technology in shaping higher education today. So these two discourses, the technological discourse and the emotional discourse, have been extensively researched in higher education contexts, but mostly as two separate streams of literature. The first stream, which deals with emotions and therapeutic discourse in academia, has shown how universities increasingly focus on students' well-being and personal development as part of their commercialization processes. While the second stream, which deals with digitalization of higher education. Educational technologies has often been understood as suppressing emotions in favor of cold rationality, where students become data points managed through algorithms and metrics. But what I found in my research and appears so clearly and vividly in this advertisement is that these are not two trends that are coincidentally appearing at the same time and place. Rather, these are two discourses that are woven together and reinforce each other in the construction of digital academic education today. And this is actually what I will try to show you today. How do technology and emotions come together in shaping digital academic education? And how does emotional logic shape the way we imagine and build technologies in higher education? So before I dive into my findings, let me give you some context about both where this research takes place and about the people I studied who are creating these digital courses. Now, a quick word about the Israeli context. As elsewhere, Israel's higher education system has undergone neoliberal transformation over recent decades, which includes rapid privatization, growing stratification, and increasing consumerist ethos. And particularly relevant to my research, there has been a rise in external commercial EdTech companies that provide universities with course design services. These companies have become increasingly dominant in higher education worldwide. So this is not unique to Israel, but it offers a very clear window into processes happening globally. And this brings me to the key actors in my study, the professionals who build these digital courses, right at the intersection between universities and at the companies, the digital learning designers, or DLD in short. This relatively new profession has emerged at the intersection of EdTech companies and universities. In Israel, there is a formal certification program that trains them, covering pedagogical principles, technical skills, and emotional psychological aspects of online learning. What these learning designers do is convert traditional universities course to digital formats. They actually coordinate among professors, programmers, university administration, and production teams. And in doing so, they make countless decisions, like how should the course be structured? How do we monitor students? What should professors do in digital course? And what does good learning look like online? What makes them fascinating research subject is their unique intermediary position. They sit between two institutional worlds, universities with their traditional academic logic and EdTech companies with their commercial tech-driven logic. And their job is to translate between these two worlds. So for this study, I conducted 25 in-depth interviews with digital learning designers, and it's been complemented by participant observation in their training course. I talked to people from diverse backgrounds, like education, psychology, social work, and educational technology, ranging from newcomers to veterans with over 10 years of experience. And while this diversity allows me to capture a wide range of perspectives, the current study does not aim to be representative, and nor does it seek to generalize to the entire population of digital designers in Israel. Instead, it's a qualitative ethnographic study that aims to analyze the key meanings and conceptual anchors that emerge from a specific field. In the interviews, I ask questions like, how do you understand your role as DLD? What challenges do you face converting courses to digital formats? How do you view student-professor relationship in digital course? But what I was really listening to wasn't just what they do, but how they imagine and justify what they do. The language they use to talk about students, professors, technology, and emotions. How do they make sense of their work? So during the conversations with DLDs, one of the central topics that emerged in their narratives was the issue of students' independence and autonomy in the digital learning experience. Ruth, a veteran digital learning designer, explained this. Learning has to be digital, first of all, to educate for self-learning, for curiosity, for research skills, and for the ability to do things on my own. It encourages independent searching for information sources. It gives students more independence, more responsibility, and it also creates their involvement and commitment to learning. So for Ruth, independence and autonomy are not just a nice side effects of the digital course. It's the whole point. Similarly, students' autonomy is central to how other DLDs think about digital courses. Nancy explained how they actually build this into the course design. So she said, there is a very organized logic, so learners can progress. They don't need the lecturer to move forward. They can read independently. Everything is digital and you don't need to start searching, not even on the internet, as everything is very accessible. Nancy emphasizes the organized technological logic that enables students' independence from the professor, creating an experience of convenience and accessibility. And based on analyzing Nancy and other DLD's narratives, when DLDs talk about autonomy, they're actually talking about three things. Independence from the professors, since the technology itself becomes the guide. Development of self-regulation skills, and the experience of convenience and accessibility, being able to study on your phone while traveling and choosing which assignments to do. In other words, autonomy becomes about creating feeling of control, satisfaction, and comfort. But that's only one side of the coin, the autonomous self-directed learner. But now let me show you the other side. Emily describes. There is an amazing dashboard, so you can see everything, from students' grades to exactly at which point in the video they dropped off. Meaning, where was there such an attention drop? We measured ourselves, the satisfaction, attention measurement, the effectiveness, every possible metric that exists, we measured and improved accordingly. And while you can't approach each student personally, the data helps with it. When students struggled with certain content, they provided clarifications in a personal way that felt more engaging. Yeah. So Emily's language highlights emotional aspects like satisfaction, interest, and making content more engaging. She emphasizes continuous measurement, portraying surveillance as a dynamic process addressing students' emotional needs and engagement. For example, the point where the students stopped watching the video is translated as the point where students lose interest, when their attention and satisfaction drop. Emily's framing presents data collection as a solution when personal attention is impossible. Similarly, DLDs constantly position learning analytics as tools for identifying and supporting students. They describe how these systems enable close monitoring, allowing professors to help students with problems or give a nudge to those falling behind. Moreover, their narratives present students as vulnerable subjects who might slip through the cracks without constant technological monitoring and intervention. Notably, they focus not on pure academic challenges such as grades or comprehension of the learning materials, but on emotional aspects and life management issues. In other words, their language frames students through a therapeutic lens as individuals struggling with self-management and needing emotional support. And this brings us to the next part of my findings, the dual transformation of professorial role in digital education. So this dual view of students as both autonomous and vulnerable reflects a similar duality in university professors' roles. DLD I spoke with expressed criticism of the professor role as knowledge provider and simultaneously construct an expanded role of the professor as caregivers who must maintain students' engagement and emotional well-being. Please articulate this perspective. Listen, they've been lecturers for years. The whole learning world operates in the same way. There is someone who transfers knowledge, they come and stand in front of a class of X students and impart their knowledge to them. And the students in the class sit and say amen. This world is changing. I very much hope so. There are already many people who learn programming through digital platforms without needing this lecturer, and they will still get their degree. So Lisa views the traditional professor as outdated. She uses religious metaphor like students saying amen to portray lecturer-based teaching as an archaic ritual. Through this framing, she positions the traditional professor not just as unnecessary, but as an obstacle to educational progress, suggesting students can learn and get degrees independently. And in doing so, she presents the decline of professorial authority as both inevitable and desirable in the evolution of higher education. However, a closer look at the DLD's narratives revealed a more complex picture where the professor role is not exactly diminishing, but reimagined in digital courses. Eve explained this transformation. The professor just stands there and explains. Anyone can do that, and it's not the right thing. I use as little as possible of what's called the lecturer stands and talk approach. The lecturer role is to be guide, to accompany, something like workshop facilitator. That is, the role become more about group management than knowledge management. For example, the lecturer needs to set up WhatsApp group and write, "Friends, I'm available if you need help." This way, they can really make them feel that although it's digital and remote, they're not alone, which is often what underlines students' negative feelings. So Eve echoes Lisa's criticism by dismissing traditional lecturing when she says anyone can do that. However, she also introduces the professor's crucial role in digital courses, framing him as a guide, support, and facilitator. The informal language she prescribes, friends, Construct a model of professorial authority based on accessibility and emotional closeness rather than hierarchical distance. Moreover, she explicitly connects this new role of students' emotional well-being. She explicitly connects this new role to students' emotional well-being, positioning professors as responsible for ensuring students don't feel alone. While the shift from lecturer to facilitator is researched in educational discourse, what makes Eve framing this distinct is how she intertwines emotional and technological discourses in her vision of digital teaching. For example, her WhatsApp group example reveals how technological features, instant messaging, constant availability, becomes inseparable from new forms of professorial authority based on emotional closeness. This fusion of technological and emotional frameworks fundamentally reshapes academic relationships, where being a good professor requires mastery not just of emotional language, but also of specific digital practices of care and connection. And this transformation of the professor roles from knowledge authority to emotional caregiver is further enhanced through data-driven practices. Alongside development in the professor's role as caregiver, another and perhaps surprising role has also emerged, the professor as a presenter. Emily explained this. Being a lecturer is a skill. It's a profession. It's knowing how to excite the audience. In academia, they take a person and put them to teach, but they are not necessarily professional. It's something on the side. The gap isn't because they don't care. They're just not good enough. They're not capable. It's simply not their profession. I come from a place where if you are an instructor or teacher, must be your profession. So Emily emphasizes lecturing as a distinct profession requiring specific performance-oriented abilities. By stating that professors are not capable, she critiques academic hiring practices and suggests that scholarly credentials are not enough for effective teaching. Her perspective aligns with established trend in neoliberal universities, where professors are increasingly expected to function as entertainers who must emotionally engage their students' consumers. Emily positions performance and engagement abilities not as an optional attributes, but as an essential requirements for teaching in a modern university. And this tension between academic expertise and performance skills is further elaborated in Lisa's account. I learned about the presenters that, surely in academia, it's clear who the presenters are. It's the mathematics expert and the psychology expert. But that's not right. The presenters often don't fit. What can you do? People are not used to standing in front of a camera and appearing casual and comfortable. And videos often fail because of this. The presenter isn't engaging enough or professional enough. Sorry, they are professional, but they are not professional enough when it comes to standing in front of a camera. It puts them outside of their comfort zone, and it just doesn't look good. So the term presenter, which Lisa uses instead of professor, appeared repeatedly in interviews with digital learning designers. Borrowed from the language of media, this term reframes teaching as performative act and places presentation skills at the center of professors' role in digital academia. In other words, In the DLD's narrative, successful professors are those who can entertain and emotionally engage their students. The demand for professors in higher education to act as presenters has been discussed in previous research, independent from digitalization processes. However, digital platforms have amplified this expectation and embodied it within concrete formal dimensions. They translate it into specific technological formats, like short videos, on-camera performance, and on-screen charisma that equate pedagogical success with engagement metrics. What is new in these findings, therefore, is not the idea of performative teaching itself, but the way digital systems encode and intensify the emotional consumerist ideals that already shape the contemporary university. So let me bring this together. In recent years, digital technologies have become deeply integrated into higher education. While data collection in higher education is not new, institutions have always tracked grades, attendance, and other metrics. We are witnessing a sweeping intensification of this practice, including monitoring of students' behavioral and emotional indicators. As previous scholars shown, this growing expansion of digital surveillance is closely linked to processes of commercialization and the rise of academic capitalism within higher education institutions. It reflects broader societal shifts toward what has been termed surveillance capitalism and the platform society. Contemporary literature builds on this, examining how EdTech platforms have become crucial intermediaries in amplifying these market-oriented transformations. This literature shows that utilitarian practices have become embodied in university relationship patterns, positioning faculty and administration as service providers and students as rational consumers managed through algorithmic control. My research similarly examines the EdTech university intersection through critical lens of academic capitalism. However, previous research has focused primarily on institutional transformations and utilitarian aspects of market logic. But the interviews with digital learning designers reveal another crucial dimension, the central role of emotional knowledge and therapeutic discourse as organizing principles through which designers construct and legitimize their technological solutions. This perspective connects directly to what scholars such Illouz and others describes as emotional capitalism. Consumerism and commercialization, she argues, always involve an emotional dimension, as feelings become integral to capitalistic production and exchange. Emotional capitalism exposes how capitalistic logic and emotional life are intertwined through a therapeutic culture that produces a paradoxical configuration. Relationships, services, and communication become increasingly emotional, while emotions themselves are rationalized, bureaucratized, and commodified. And in this sense, emotions are not merely present within economic life, they become economic resources in their own right, measured, managed, and deployed as institutional assets. And while much existing research on digital education has focused on how emotions are datified and quantified, Less attention has been paid to how emotional frameworks actively shape the very design and implementation of educational technologies. The study reveals that emotions are not simply monitored or measured. Rather, emotional and therapeutic discourses play a constitutive role in how educational platforms are imagined and constructed. In doing so, they create new epistemic machineries in which emotional logic and technological rationality are deeply intertwined, producing novel configurations of teaching, learning, and authority in contemporary higher education. The study proposed supervised autonomy as a key concept for understanding this transformation. The concept captures how students are simultaneously positioned as independent digital consumers and as emotionally vulnerable students or subjects requiring constant monitoring. Surveillance technologies are reframed through therapeutic language as emotional care, while students' autonomy is justified through consumerist ideals of choice and self actualization. Within this framework, market practices of tracking become legitimized through emotional discourse, while therapeutic support is delivered through commercialized analytics. And supervised autonomy thus reveals not the parallel existence of market and emotional logics, but their deep integration in reshaping digital education. And this paradox extends to the role of the professors. Just as students are positioned as both autonomous and vulnerable, professors experience a similar dual transformation. Their traditional authority as knowledge experts is diminished in favor of facilitating students. Professors are redefined as emotional caregivers who use data analytics to support students, and as digital performers who must engage and entertain. And within this commercial emotional framework, academic expertise becomes secondary to emotional labor and performative skills. These findings extend our understanding of academic capitalism by revealing that emotional frameworks do not simply coexist with market logic, they actively legitimize and reinforce them. And the concept of supervised autonomy highlights a broader dynamics in which surveillance capitalism operates not only through technical infrastructures, but also through effective governance that renders monitoring acceptable and even desirable. And thank you very much.
Thank you. That was fascinating. We've got some questions in the chat, so I will start with those. But if other people have questions, please do add them to the chat as well. I'll come to colleagues in the room in a second. Maria, would you like to stop sharing so that we can see more clearly? Great. Okay, so the first question is from Sarah Schippecker. Sarah, are you able to unmute yourself and ask your question yourself? If you could also switch your camera on, that would be great.
Hi, I hope y'all can hear me. I'm sorry, I'm traveling at the moment. I'm joining from beautiful Lubbock, Texas. I work at Texas Tech University. And yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Maria, so much. This was such a wonderful presentation. I absolutely loved it. I'm originally from Austria, so that's my background, and my academic background is in higher education and communication. So this is perfect for me. This was really, really interesting. I am wondering, how do you position your research in this ongoing debate, specifically in the US, about the role of the professor, potential ideological challenges that come with the professor being in the classroom? How do you situate your research in those conversations?
Just elaborate a bit about those conversations, because I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Oh, right.
political views of professors, you mean?
Yes, so basically that the professor almost takes on this quote unquote indoctrinating role, and that's a potential danger, and that we should focus more on teaching neutral content and information. So basically seeing the professor as a potential danger in the classroom almost.
Yeah, I think I understood your question. I feel like the political or ideological conversations in academia or between professors and students are perceived as something that danger the emotional comfort of students. And just from my findings from the thesis and the PhD, I think that one of the side effects of this process of emotionalization of higher education is also less political conversations, and being very cautious of talking about ideological or about controversial opinions of the professors. I hope I understood your question. It was the
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Maria. So the second question in the chat is from Louise. Louise Cusero, do you want to unmute as well? Oh, great. Thanks, Louise. Nice to see you.
Yes, you too, you too. Maria, that was such a brilliant presentation and what fascinating research. Thank you so much for sharing it. I was wondering if you might be able to say a bit more about the demand structure in this space. So, for example, like to what extent do you think universities are articulating their needs to edtech companies versus edtech companies sort of saying or shaping what universities then come to see as their needs, if that makes sense?
Yeah. It's interesting that you're questioning about that because during the conversations with DLDs, one of the things they repeatedly say is that the universities and the academia is the worst clients they ever had. So they said universities are so demanding, they're not satisfied with our outcomes. And while in the business sectors, there are other norms, and maybe people are maybe a little bit more polite about the products or trying to compromise, they feel like professors in the universities are not compromising at all, and very stubborn in their position. But on the other side, when I speak with professors, they say the opposite. They said that at the companies are the worst organizations to work with, and they are so demanding, and they want that everything looks like in their way. So I feel it's kind of combination of these two worlds. And I think that digital learning designers, they're standing in the intersection of these arguments and trying to compromise. But I didn't try to quantify, like to say how much, universities bring to the table and how much the tech companies bring.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But did you get a sense that the universities had quite a clear idea of what they wanted? Did you get a sense of that at all?
Yes, I think that most of the universities comes with very clear ideas and demands of what they want, but the edtech people and the learning designers usually just not agree with those demands, and they feel that if they will agree for those demands, so their products will damaged, like their reputation as company or as learning designers will damage. So
yeah, fascinating. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louise, and thanks, Maria. So the next question in the chat is from Glenn Atelier. Would you like to ask your question, Glenn?
Thank you. Maria, your story is really fascinating. Thank you for the work that you've put in. My question to you is, did your study factor in decreasing its attention spans among students at this time of digital media
Yeah, Glenn, I think there's a problem with your microphone there.
Right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, can someone
Thanks, David. So the question, Maria, is did your study factor in the attention spans among students at this time of digital medias?
I'm really sorry, I can't hear you because I still hear other voices.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sorry. Did your study factor in the decreasing attention spans among students at this time of digital media, when digital media is competing with academia to attract and retain consistent learners? So the kind of, the decreasing attention span, was that something that you looked at all? And did that figure in the work of the DLDs, I guess?
Actually, no, I didn't focus on these questions. So I don't have really data about how media or other sectors taking the attention of students. But as we saw in the findings, when DLDs use terms like presenters or talking about skills of standing in front of a camera, so I think we can, think of this media world and the influence of media discourse, but I did not focus on this part. I hope I understood your question. Is that?
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, Glenn, if you wanted to ask a follow-up question in the chat, if Maria didn't get at what you were asking, please do. And Maria, if I could ask a question while others may be thinking or putting those in the chat. I guess one question I was wondering about was kind of the impact of this beyond the specific technologies that you're talking about. So I guess, to some extent you were arguing that this was reflecting trends that are already there in academia, but in other ways you were saying that it was kind of, reinforcing them. Do you see an impact beyond the specific technologies that you're talking about in reframing either how we understand students or how we understand professors?
Yeah, so I think I just want to make sure that I understood your question. You're asking if these processes are influenced processes that are happening outside of digital technologies, right? Outside of digital education.
It's more the impact of them beyond digital technologies. Are they just reflecting trends that we see in the rest of the university? Having an impact on the rest of the university?
Yeah. So I think it's the both. First, they of course reflect the powers and the cultural streams that already exist in the university and well researched. But I think that also the digital platforms convert or making it very concrete. They are framing it as something that is very formal. They are formalizing these processes, and it's like giving a name for something. So instead of saying the professor is not capable enough, he's not engaging enough, I can say his metrics is showing that he's not capable, or people are not watching his videos. So it makes things more concrete and more measurable, I think.
Okay, thank you. Any questions in the room? David, I think you have one.
Please. That was fascinating, Maria. I really enjoyed that. One question I had was, obviously this is the view of the DLDs. Did you ever encounter them talking to the academics, and did they push back on this narrative? Because in some ways you could say that academics have long focused on care. I mean, the DLDs might say that they only really, stood at the front and asked everyone to say amen, but there will be a strong narrative that academics would tell about education as a form of care. But of course, yes, of course it's changing. I get what you're saying, that it's now quantifiable. You can measure care.
So I did spoke with academics about these processes and specifically with professors who participate in creating or converting their courses digital, converting from traditional formats to digital formats. And usually they were very frustrating about these processes. There were also few processes that failed and they didn't proceed, they didn't continue with the EdTech companies. They felt like their authority and their ideas are not important enough for DLDs. And I didn't talk about it in this section because I tried to focus on DLDs here. But it was absolutely very controversial process between DLDs and professors, and they tried to, like, not once they tried to resist or to bring alternatives. For example, there were professors who suggest that they will convert their courses to digital without at the companies or with educational units in the universities. So there was also alternative forms of the process I showed right now.
And can I just ask, are there particular universities you were working with? Because some universities, such as the Open University, would be much more committed to scaling digital. Others might not be.
So my main ethnographic work was in one of the Israeli universities. I can't say the name because of the anonymity of my participants, but it's public university.
Okay, that's right.
And it was a pilot. It was like the digital courses and the collaboration with at the companies were part of pilot process.
Good. No, that's great. Thank you very much. Really interesting.
I have a very small question. Thank you, Maria. And I just have a very small one. You just mentioned that you have like the data collection as kind of care for students. Sorry, can you hear me?
Not really. Sorry, I can't. I hear you're speaking, but I can't understand the words.
I'm sorry. So you mentioned that in your presentation that you said data collection as kind of care for your students, right? My question is, what extent do you think like your students, the interviewers get any mental support from your interview?
What was the question? What?
I'm quite curious about because he just mentioned that he did data collections, and the students think that kind of data collection is kind of care and support for students. Do you mean like students are marginalized and nobody hear about their voices, but they are still looking forward to have someone to know about them?
Did you ask about the experience of the students, how they feel and how they experience this process?
Yes.
Didn't understand. Okay. So actually, I didn't interview students in this research, so I don't know how they actually feel and what they actually think about all this process. I focused on how DLDs and professor imagine students and imagine their role and their place in academia. I did interview students in my thesis and my previous work, and I found it was not about digital technologies, it's about emotional culture in academia. And I found other findings that I think is not exactly relevant to this discussion. But here my focus was on the imagination and construction of the student role, but not their actual experience.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Union, and thank you, Maria. We have a couple more questions in the chat, Maria, and I think neither of these people can use their microphones at the moment, so I'll read them out for you. The first one's from Maria Kariva, and she says, what would you say are the main implications of your research for EdTech practice?
That's a good question. It's always a tough one, right? For sociology, for me, I don't know, because I didn't thought so much about the implications of my research. I think I tried to capture meanings or imaginations of people and interpretations of my participants, but I did not think about my research as the implementation part, and maybe that's one of the problems that I need to think about. But I really can't. Unfortunately, I really cannot answer this question.
The person who asked that question, Maria Kariva, she's just added in a further comment in the chat. She says, just to clarify, she works in EdTech, which is why she asked, and she's wondering how she can take this research to her company. So I guess, what would be your main messages that you'd like to EdTech companies to hear from your research, I guess?
Oh, that's a really good one.
It's a good opportunity with somebody from an EdTech company.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought they will listen. So I'm really happy. I think that the main question is what's the purpose of the digital course? And while the purposes of the university and the EdTech is so different, at least in the Israeli context, so it's really, really hard to succeed and to create something that will be successful for both sides. I think that, for example, one of the maybe implementations can be providing or suggesting DLDs who are specialized in the knowledge or in the content of the course. So, for example, many of my participants were with very different academic background. So someone could learn psychology, but converting course in mathematics or in computers. And this is one of the gaps that's been very hard for professors and one of the problems to collaborate in this sense. So I think maybe this part could be helpful.
Thanks, Maria. And the other Maria has just said thank you. That's helpful. So thank you, Maria, for your question. Then there's one other question in the chat. Again, somebody who can't read it themselves at the moment. Andreas Vasilopoulos. Andreas has said, how may all this academic surveillance concept expand to conventional higher education and the concept of student-centered learning, for example, as promoted by the European Union and the Bologna process? So I guess you can interpret that question either positively, that there might be some things around care that could be transferred, or kind of in a negative sense, less good things that be transferred. But do you see kind of any implications for conventional higher education from what you found in your research?
I need to think about these questions, about this particular question a bit, if that's okay. So maybe we can gather a few questions and then I will try to answer.
That is the only question that's there at the moment, Maria.
Okay.
I'll ask if anybody else has got any, but
okay. I'm sorry, but I really cannot answer this question right now because I feel I need to think about it. Like, it's a good point and I need to think about it a little bit more. But I would love to answer email or any other way.
And that's fine. And Andreas has put that's okay. And yes, please, to the email correspondence. Yeah, maybe you could add something to the chat afterwards, because I think that stays live, doesn't it? Yes, yeah. Okay, any final questions from Maria, either from people in the room or online? No? Okay, well, in that case, I'll draw the webinar to a close. Thank you very much, Maria, for your presentation, which was absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure has given all of us food for thought. So thank you very much. Just to let everybody know that the CG seminar next week is called Unmaking Knowledge Towards Cognitive Justice in International Higher Education, and is going to be given by Vera Spangler. And as David has put in the chat, we'll be here again at 2 o'clock. So thank you all for coming along today, and look forward to seeing many of you next time too. And thanks, Maria.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel, again for inviting me, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.